All right, here we are. Short story long, we're back. I'm really, really excited about this episode because I just finished this man's book. It's called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. His name is Eric Barker, and I'm excited to get into all the topics in this book, man. Welcome.
Oh, dude, it's great to be here.
Thanks for making this happen. Our mutual friend Ryan Holiday connected us.
Yeah.
And just like on his podcast that I did, I was telling you before we started too, my goal is like I've been really into reading lately, but I don't necessarily expect to just be able to post books on my Instagram and people to go read them and us to share in that moment, right?
Yep.
I think that what would be cool is if I could accomplish using this podcast platform that I have to actually, when I love a book, try to get in touch with the author and come on and really have the conversation about all the topics and sort of spread all that same knowledge that I learned. So hopefully we can accomplish that.
Very cool.
Yeah. I know that you're used to this sort of stuff. Once again, we were just talking, you do speaking and stuff like that. And so you're used to kind of talking about the topics. But I'm excited, man. This was one that I've been reading a lot, and most of them are in the self-helpy sort of lane. But there's a lot of bad ones in that lane.
Very true.
As you
Very
know.
true.
And this was one, to be honest, I think that I came across it more because of like the marketing that it had. I was seeing it everywhere.
Okay.
And I don't think that it was referred to me by someone. Like usually Ryan refers books or whatever. I think this one I just said, man, I've been seeing this everywhere. Let me give it a shot.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that's about a 50-50. You have about a 50-50 chance if you take that route.
Those are pretty good numbers.
Pretty
by
generous
the way.
odds, yeah, of being like readable and being, just something that I have to bail on. But this was like really got me. And the way that you put it and the way that you just sort of say some of the preconceived notions are wrong of what makes you successful.
Yeah.
Really exploring both sides of each argument, I really liked. Because a lot of people say, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And it's easy, I think, to read those books and be like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. But you really give like the full picture and say, well, for some people this works and some people that works. I would say if you could kind of be here, you can win.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's a big issue is I try to treat every chapter like kind of like a court case. Like here's both sides of the argument. Because if there's one simple answer for everybody, well, then why doesn't everybody just do that?
Exactly.
And so much of it is about like our own personality traits, our own interests, and kind of getting that alignment between who you are, what you want, where you're at. You know, if I would think that anything that doesn't take those into consideration, we're all different people, we're all coming from different places, but that doesn't mean it's totally relative. It just means we need to find that balance between like who we are inside, where we're going, and what environment are we in.
Yeah. Yeah, and you do a good job at that too, of saying like, who are you, and now how do you use those strengths and weaknesses to your benefit? You know what I mean? And how do you work against those? But I like it, man. I think that a lot of people, one complaint that I have is a lot of people become successful and then write books about success, and they almost tell it as if they knew what they were doing all along.
It's so common to kind of rewrite history or to forget, or they say I came from humble beginnings, and then there's this gap, and then it's like, and then I was a millionaire, and you're like, wait, that you didn't talk about that little part,
exactly.
And it's like when you look at the academic research and everything, it's like they always talk about signature strengths. Like Martin Seligman at University of Pennsylvania is really big, this idea of signature strengths. And it's kind of like, what are you uniquely good at? What do you really bring to the table that if you asked your friends, if you surveyed your friends, they would all be like, hey, here's what he does so much better than most people. And when we do those things, not only are we more successful because we're good at them, but also the more you exercise your signature strengths, the research shows you're happier, people respect you more, you like what you're doing. But we all kind of get that. You do what you're naturally good at. But what I found really interesting was when I talked to Gautam Mukunda at Harvard Business School, he talked about intensifiers. And these are the qualities that might be negative. You know, it's like people might criticize you for, but in the right environment, they can be like superpowers where it's like people might say, oh, you're stubborn. And it's like in your personal relationships, stubbornness isn't good. But when you're an entrepreneur, you got to be persistent. Well, stubbornness and persistence are kind of the same thing. And it's like, you might be argumentative. Well, hey, if you're a litigator, being argumentative is key. So like knowing that like even the things you're criticized for, your negatives, if you find if you pick the right pond, if you find the right place, they can actually be positive.
Yeah, man. What I really wish for myself and all of my listeners and every person on earth is like the clarity. You know, like it just seems to me the more that I get into this stuff, it's like just knowing who you really are.
Yeah.
Like not who you want to be,
Yeah.
not who your hero is, and therefore you're going to try to be that, or not, whatever, living through somebody else. It's like the clarity, the first step of just knowing who you are, what you're good at, what you like, what you don't like. And then building on that of, okay, what career path does that probably take me towards?
Yeah.
What do I need to work on? What do I, it's like, it's the same way, like a lot, like I'm going to do a thing this week. I wrote it down to do finally, but where I'm going to just make a list of having the employees here rate me on different qualities. Yeah. And I'm just going to anonymously ask everyone to do it, put it in a box, and I'm going to read it. And I'm going to take the cold hard truth or some of the, some of the good. But people don't do that. You just assume like, oh, everyone here likes me. I'm reasonable. I'm a good listener, and I'm going to get some feedback that's like, you're an asshole, and you don't listen to anything I say, and I'm going to be like, what the hell, But it's that clarity that I think is so important,
and that's critical. What's really interesting is basically exactly what you said. When you look at the research, it turns out we're often terrible at realizing, like kind of what we're good at, what we're not, and exactly that. If you take the time to ask your friends, ask people around you. They often, in the studies, they often have a better idea than we do, because we tell ourselves, these kind of things that make us keep our self-esteem. And people, and especially if you do it anonymously, then people are much more likely to be honest with you. But once you get that feedback, like you say, you're not deluding yourself anymore, because there's just study after study that shows we kind of kid ourselves. We want to keep our self-esteem, so like people, they did one study where they had two groups of people, and they said, how good a driver are you? And the same percentage, pretty much in each group, said, I'm an excellent driver. Okay, well, the first group was random, and the second group were people who had caused terrible car accidents. And both people were just as likely to say, oh yeah, I'm a good driver. It's like we tell ourselves these things because we want to maintain our self-esteem, and that's understandable. But like you're saying, every now and then you need a reality check so you can kind of course correct.
You do, man. There was a point in my life where I was doing television and the brand was successful and whatever. And one of the biggest moments that I remember is I'm relatively, not horribly, but relatively socially, I would say awkward or introverted or whatever, right? When I'm in completely foreign, unknown situations. So in certain situations where I thought I was just sort of out of my element and being a little awkward, the other person thought that I was just a cocky asshole. And that came to my attention, and I was like, "Holy shit, no!" Like I feel like I don't belong here. Like I'm not good enough to be in this situation. You know what I'm saying? Like that sort of feeling. And you're telling me that you think I'm too good to be here. And it's like the disconnect. And so what it meant was me just being a little bit more open and me being a little bit more friendly. Now all of a sudden everyone connects better, problem solved. And it's like it's the worst. It's just so funny how that happens, but those clarity exercises I want to find more of, and I want to really get good at.
I mean, getting that feedback's critical, and like what you're talking about, where it's like we misperceive each other. It's like there's one thing they talked about in one of the studies that was in terms of connecting with people was social optimism. Was basically, if you just believe other people will like you, they're much more likely to like you. And the truth is that our relationships are what consistently provides like the most happiness in terms of people's lives. Where, in the book I talk about extroverts and introverts, and, extroverts get to draw on these great networks, but introverts have this extra time to get good at what they do. But one thing they found is when introverts act a little bit more like extroverts, they're actually happier too. It's
that really resonated with me.
Me too. Just putting yourself out there, giving it a little bit more, we actually end up happier. It's like both extroverts and introverts can kind of learn from one another.
And I think the thing that made me really happy is, I believe, maybe I'm being biased, but it's easier to be an introvert and act extroverted than to be an extrovert and act introverted, if you know what I mean. So like the benefit of the introverts in the book was they buckle down, they focus on things, they don't need the outside stimulation, so they're able to complete tasks, stuff like that. Focus and write a book. I'm guessing most authors are probably introverts. But it's easier for you to go out and act extroverted and do some speaking engagements and meet some people than it is for this, super extroverted person to really buckle down and write a book. I think that would be really hard. So that, to me, maybe I'm being biased, but for me, I was like, yes, okay, got it.
You know what you need to do. It's like being able to draw your energy from inside versus having to draw it from outside. It's like for all of us to just kind of understand those, it's like there's extroverts, ambiverts, and introverts.
Yep.
And, extroverts kind of draw their energy from the world around them. Introverts have a very strong internal world. Ambiverts are somewhere in between.
Yep.
And it's like to just understand kind of what your superpower is.
Yeah.
And then to kind of develop enough of that other side that you can get the benefits. Like you said, to be able to reach out there when you need to, it's critical.
So cool. Okay, so real quick, I just want to take it to you for a second. Right. I guess my first question is like, how did you even get into writing?
For me, initially, I was actually a screenwriter in Hollywood. So it's funny. I went from writing fiction to now doing nonfiction. And believe me, sometimes it's easier to just make stuff up.
I bet.
I enjoyed that part, and that made this. But you make stuff up, you get in a lot of trouble with nonfiction. But no, I started out with that, and that's kind of how I honed my writing skills. But then my career took me kind of like all over the place. I worked in movies, and then I worked in animation. I worked in video games. I went from getting a Master's of Fine Arts to getting an MBA. Like I went like all over the place.
Yeah.
And I started asking a lot of questions about like, because I felt like I was a little weird. I didn't fit in. I had this unconventional career.
Yeah.
And that's when I started asking a lot of the questions about like, do nice guys finish last? Is it better to be an introvert or an extrovert? And I wanted some answers, so I went down the rabbit hole kind of, looking at the research and saying like, and you realize, holy cow, a lot of the questions that we struggle over, there are answers to these. It's just they're buried on the internet in this like often indecipherable academic jargon that nobody wants to read. Yeah. And to me, it's just like taking all that cool stuff, these cool ideas, which might be written like an insurance contract, and then taking them and giving it some humor, making it accessible and bringing it out there. That's to me what I hopefully I'm bringing to the table.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, let me just tell you this. Thank you for not only going down that rabbit hole by yourself, but then sharing it. Oh, you know what I mean? Because you could have just went down this rabbit hole and, okay, now you know everything. You have all the keys. You know what I mean? But for you to package it up in this nice book is like, man, thank you. Because there's a lot of the same like questions that I wonder.
That's what I've been doing on my blog for like eight years now. For me, it's like a kid in a candy store. Sometimes these research papers are tough to read, but when I talk to the academics and I hear like, William Gibson has this great quote I love where he says, the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Yeah. So it's like we have these answers, we have these things, but just not everybody knows they're there. Yeah. And also, something that was it's fun for me, and I really dug it doing it with the book, is also talking to people who are like undisputed experts in their field. So it's great to talk to academics and researchers about resilience, but I also call my buddy James Waters, who's a Navy SEAL platoon commander. Yeah. It's like, okay, this guy, nobody's going to doubt. This guy knows something about resilience and like negotiation. There's professors on negotiation. I was talking to my buddy Chris Voss, who's former lead international hostage negotiator for the FBI. Yeah. Like nobody's going to, when this guy does his job right, like people live versus die. Yeah. Okay, this guy has some answers for us. So to like look at the people who have researched it and the people who have done it, it's like we get a little bit. And what's often is you see like how much overlap there is, and you also see the points where they diverge. Yeah,
it's so cool, man. Okay, so let's get into it. Yeah. Chapter 1, you talk about playing it safe. Yeah. One of the things that I love, because it's a big topic not only in my life but on this podcast, is the reality of how high achievers in high school achieve in real life. Yeah, and how most times, or a lot of times, some of the highest achievers and the valedictorians and the straight A students don't perform well outside of that because of the, the resourcefulness and stuff like that. Can you tell me like a little bit about like what you found there? Yeah,
there was research that Karen Arnold did at Boston College where she looked at valedictorians from high school, and what she found is that they do well. They they do very well. Yeah. But they don't usually end up leading the world or changing the world. Yeah. And that's because, certainly it's like, they have IQ, they have whatever. But what's critical to success in school isn't just being awesome or just being smart. The critical thing is following the rules. Yeah. Are you good at following the rules? Because school has very clear rules. And if you check the boxes, you'll get A's, you'll get good grades. That's great. Life doesn't have clear rules.
Yep.
You can't be an entrepreneur in high school. You have to do what they tell you.
Yep.
In life, you can create your own business. You don't get to create your own classes in high school, at least not across the board.
Yep.
And also, there's a total disconnect in the area of, specialization, where in high school, if you're a specialist, if you're like, oh man, I totally love history. I think history is awesome. Sorry, you need to stop and study math and study these other subjects.
Yeah.
You're taught to be a generalist. You're taught to be pretty good at a bunch of different things. But life's not necessarily like that.
Yeah.
Life, you go out, if you're really awesome at one thing, most companies, most places don't care if you're really good. If you're a fantastic quarterback, good enough to be in the NFL, they don't care if you're good at history or you're good at geometry. So, school teaches you to be this generalist, and life often rewards being a specialist. So what you see is that the valedictorians do well, but they don't usually end up leading the world or changing the world because they're looking to follow the rules. They're not looking to break the rules, bend the rules, or recreate the rules.
Yeah. It's so cool. I'm so fascinated by that, and fascinated by like the system. I feel like what's happening right now and why entrepreneurship is so cool and why people like Gary Vee are superstars is because the conventional way of thinking for the last forever, I would say, was you do well in school, do well in high school, go to a good college, do well in a good college, all your dreams come true, you're rich, successful. That is the path. And there is a path, and if you're not doing well in school, you're messing up and you're not going to win in life. And I think that what's happening really, in my opinion, is with social media, young people are seeing that that isn't true. And I think they kind of were getting a little aware of it anyways because of student debt, and maybe their parents went to college and they didn't end up as successful as they had hoped. And so it was kind of being like, wait a minute, something's fishy here. And then with social media, you're seeing not only is everyone an entrepreneur, I mean, most people are fake entrepreneurs, but so it looks like everyone's successful. So it's like, holy shit, this is not the way. Because one thing I've never seen on Instagram is a guy standing next to his Lamborghini saying, thank God I got that degree. They just don't talk about it, right? I'm not saying that college is bad, but I'm saying, so I think it's opened all of these young people's minds to like, wait a minute, there's a new way. Or there's something I don't know. And that's why I need to read these books and listen to these podcasts. And like, I'm just fascinated by that. There's a quote to A students work for B students, C students run the company, and D students dedicate the buildings, right? It's like a big...
I mean, you see it time and time again where it's because for so long, it was the issue of, like you said, social media, people being able to get out there and really show what they can do. There wasn't any way for everybody to have that visibility. So we relied on signals. And the signal was usually like a college degree. Which college did you go to? Which grades did you get? That signal is pretty good, but it's not perfect. Now, with social media, with people's abilities to be able to really try things and do so many things, you don't have to rely on the signal anymore. You can actually see, as opposed to, hey, is this guy good at marketing? Well, I don't know. He got a college degree in marketing. I guess he learned something. Sure, trust the signal. Versus maybe a kid who didn't go to college, but hey, he managed to get 1 million followers on Facebook. He managed to get 1 million followers on Instagram. Guess what? He's actually doing it. I'm not trusting the signal. It's the difference between somebody telling you, hey, this guy's fast, and actually watching him run. So if people can demonstrate, who would you rather pick? It's like the person who you have to rely on what this university said or the person who actually demonstrates it. And so what we're seeing is now people have the ability to go out, take the resources, do what they do, and show it to everybody. So we don't have to rely on a sometimes inaccurate signal. We can actually see what people can do.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. Like I noticed, we live in a day where like you can, this was about a year ago or something, but I think it was James Harden posted his big Adidas shipment, but he tagged the Adidas marketing guy who dropped it off. And it's like we live in a day and age where you can actually click on that guy's profile and see who the big Adidas sports marketing guy is and see what his life looks like and see, you know what I mean? And I just think being able to peel back that curtain has people being like, okay, hold on, there's something here that I need to figure out. And that's why I'm so fascinated by that stuff. What would you say if you could say something to, let's just say, a very aware junior in high school who's doing really well but is also a hustler? It's sort of like, what do you think is there any way that you would say to strategically open your mind a little to get around getting trapped in just following the rules well?
I mean, first and foremost, one of the things I talk about in the book is the idea of little bets.
Yep.
Is the idea of basically, trying things. It's like when you're in high school, it's a big world. It's like to just being able to try things, see what you're interested in, see what you're naturally good at. Because the formula basically for success that I kind of talk about in the book is knowing yourself. The old Oracle of Delphi. Knowing yourself. What are my signature strengths? What are my intensifiers? And then aligning that with an environment that rewards those. Yep. So really critical is to try things. Little bets are basically like not signing up for the year-long membership, at the Martial Arts Academy, but try a class.
Yep.
Hey, try this, try that. Find out what you're passionate about. Find out what you're naturally good at.
Yep.
And what you see is that people, when people naturally are good at something, they come to love it. Mm-hmm. So often we follow our passions, but we're not necessarily good at them. But when there's something we're good at, we come to love it. So trying lots of little things, little bets, give it a shot, see what happens. Try 10 things, 7 don't work out, 2 are okay, but 1 you see, holy crap, I'm good at this, I dig it. And then once you found that thing, go at it. And then like you're saying with social media, it's like get the word out, show what you're doing, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's marketing, whether it's whatever. It's like show what you can do, because in the end, again, like we're saying, the college degree is a good signal, but if you can demonstrate your ability, here it is. Mm-hmm. That's what everybody's looking for.
Yeah.
So it's like try little bets, try lots of little things, see what you're passionate about, what you're good at, pursue that, develop it, and then use social media, show it to the world, get the word out there, share it with people, and then you're going to see that more opportunities are going to come your way.
Yeah, so cool. And kind of in the same vein, you talk a lot about finding the right pond, which is a big thing of yours.
Yeah.
I love the way that you put that.
Yeah.
And once again, it's like finding that. Is this the chapter also where you talk about Michael Phelps?
Yeah.
And how, like, by normal standards, he's crazy proportioned.
Yeah.
And in everything else, a lot of other things, he would be really terrible at.
Absolutely.
But he found that he has the perfect body type to be an incredible swimmer.
Yeah.
And he worked on that, and he's, and I just think like that finding the right pond thing is huge.
No, it's like you look at Michael Phelps. It's like the guy's not good at running. Yeah. The guy's not good at dancing. Yeah. His proportions are way off. Like normally your wingspan, so if you put your arms out, like that should be your height.
Yep.
His wingspan's actually longer, but that actually gives longer strokes in the pool.
Yeah.
His torso is way too long, but that's like almost like being a canoe in the water. Yeah. So it's like this is a guy who, if he had only tried track and field, nothing would have worked out for him. Yeah. But it's like, again, that little bets idea, try a bunch of different stuff. Hey, a swim coach sees a body like that and says, Olympic gold.
Yeah.
And this is the guy who's won more gold medals than anybody. Yeah. It's like, but you got to try those different things to find out, either physically, mentally, emotionally, what are you suited for? Yeah. And then, just pursuing that passion and getting it out there. And, you just see that it's not an issue of being weird or being wrong. It's just an issue of alignment, where it's like, what those differences you have, where are they strengths? Yeah. And just finding that place.
So huge. Okay, chapter 2, you go into do nice guys finish last?
Yeah.
I love this topic.
Yeah.
And I personally have never seen I've never seen this topic be broken down like the way that you did. I guess my first immediate question is, do they finish last?
Yes.
Okay.
And they finish first.
Okay.
So this is research by Adam Grant at Wharton, and what he did. And Adam's a really nice guy, and and it would have been a very sad day indeed if Adam did the research. And it's like, I found out, like, my life is going to be awful.
Damn it. Imagine that.
And so he looked at like a couple different careers, and he said, okay, the people who are the nicest, who are going out of their way to help others, how do they do? And he basically created 3 categories. He said they're givers, people who are always trying to do nice things for others altruistically, don't expect anything back. Matchers, those are people who try and keep an even balance, give and take. You do for me, I do for you. And takers, who just want to get a lot and don't want to give back.
Yep.
And basically, he looked at the success metrics of a few careers, and he noticed at first a lot of the givers were at the bottom. They're just they were getting walked on, doormats, martyrs. It was just awful.
Yep.
But then he did a thorough look at the research, and he found that actually they were at the bottom, but they were also at the top. They were disproportionately represented at both ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
And at first that sounds a little weird, but when we think about it, it makes sense. We all know somebody who is a martyr, who gets taken advantage of, who gets abused. But we all also know somebody who is awesome, that everybody loves, because that person goes out of their way, helps people out, and you feel indebted to them, and you want to help them out. And so it's less of an issue of like, oh, nice guys finished last, than just being a good person, doing for others, but being responsible enough to protect yourself, to surround yourself with good people, to make sure that you're balancing helping others with doing for yourself. You know, it's not that it's a bad thing to be given to others. It's just you also got to make sure you're covering your own butt.
Yeah, I love you broke down like the kind of what you're, in your opinion, what the sweet spot is, which is you be a giver first. But then you match, right? Is that accurate?
I mean, there are a number of strategies you can use where it's like to balance that, where they found that like a big problem that a lot of the givers did was they talked about chunking versus sprinkling. Sprinkling is somebody who's just always kind of doing favors, favors, and they forget about themselves, and they fall behind.
It's kind of how my mom is. I get on my mom a lot for that. I'm like, Mom, you can't. Like, what the hell are you doing?
And it's like, and moms, you know, it's like that's moms are great because they're doing for others. It's like. But what they found was it was like you could protect yourself and make sure that you were doing well by chunking, by saying, hey, you know, 4 days a week, I'm really focused on my goals. But man, Friday comes around and I'm giving favors. I'm doing for everybody, and I don't care if they get back. I just want to help people. By focusing that time, they made sure they weren't just doing too much for others, getting exploited. You know, it's like that issue, and they also saw that like a certain number of hours, like people who are doing volunteer work, like 100 hours a year was the sweet spot. Was people doing like 2 hours a week was really the sweet spot.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I just the balance of the giver and the matcher, the nice guy and the jerk. I think there's some breakdown in there about right where it's like, you know, you gotta. I just love essentially here's what I took from it. I took from it like, look, make the first move positive. So go out, give everyone a chance. But then watch how people react and match that. And also you talk about forgiveness as well, right? So so you're going to get stomped on here and there. Know which people to forgive and give another chance. Know which people to write off and say that's a bad person, that's a negative person, that's someone that's going to hold me down. Right? And I don't know, the way that you broke that down was really
well, that's clear. What you're describing, like that's exactly the formula, because they did this research during the Cold War in the 80s because they were trying to figure out like what's the best way for people to interact. And that's basically what they saw, was that starting out by helping others by being good sends a good signal to other people. Because if you're a taker, what's your first impression is that this guy's just out for himself. And if you're a matcher, that's fine, but you're not reaching out.
You may not make the new connection.
So you're basically waiting for people to come to you, and we all know how well that works out. Versus if you're doing for others immediately, sends a good first impression. And then, like you said, if somebody isn't helpful, isn't giving back, it's like, okay, fine. But the issue of forgiveness becomes critical because we all have bad days. We all have critical. That doesn't mean they're necessarily a bad person. So it's like if you just immediately label everybody off that first response, oh, he didn't give back, he's a bad guy. You know, it's like that's going to lead in this death spiral. It's like versus, okay, I'll forgive you one time. 2 times in a row, okay, now I know. Versus they were having a bad day. You know, they didn't get the email. They didn't see the text. It's like, okay, totally cool. But it's like putting it out there. And what you saw consistently, like you said, I don't have to win every round. I'm not worried about that. But you see in the aggregate over the course of big thing, you know, givers do really well. I might not win, you know, every individual match, but I'm going to do better. And then one of the big results of the research was you saw that, you know, when givers deal with takers, they often get taken for granted. When givers deal with matchers have that feeling of justice. Matchers end up protecting givers. I don't want to see my buddy get taken advantage of. He's a good guy. You know, it's like I try to keep it even, but like my buddy's a good guy. I don't want you taking advantage of him. And when givers meet givers, it's just exponential because, hey, let me help you out. Oh, let me help you out. Oh, no, let me help you out. And they're just doing more and more and more and more and more. And so what becomes critical is those environments. You know, Bob Sutton, who's a professor at Stanford, he's got this great quote I love where he said, you know, if you're going to start at a new company, he's like, look around at the people who work there. He's like, because you're going to become like them, they're not going to become like you.
Yeah.
You know, because the thing is, we talk about peer pressure when we talk about high school students. Truth is, peer pressure affects us our entire lives. So you always got to be thinking about that. And if you're a giver and you're surrounded by takers, A, you're going to get taken advantage of, and B, you're probably going to end up becoming a taker yourself.
Yeah.
Versus, you go to a place with matchers, they're going to cover your ass.
Yeah.
You go to a place with givers, you're all just going to be spending all day long. How can I help? How can I help you? How can I help? And you're going to be doing a lot for other people, but you're also going to be getting a lot of free stuff, you know, as well.
Yeah.
And you get this thing. And if you are stuck, if you are a giver, somebody who likes to do for others, and you're in a place with a lot of takers, what really becomes critical is just looking around, finding the other givers, and finding those matchers who will have your back. You know, locating those people, you can still do okay. As long as you got matchers who are protecting you, as long as you got other givers who, you know, are going to help you out. It's like, but you got to look around to find those people.
Yeah, so cool. I love that one. And that was the one, right, where they ran all the different computer like algorithms, right, to test against itself. So it's like just like not a nonstop giving sort of algorithm versus a magic. Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, chapter 3, you talk about essentially when to quit, when to give up, and when not to.
Yeah.
Love that topic because once again, it's always sort of you know, quitters never win. Yeah. It's just sort of the age-old thing, right? Yep. Also, grit is really popular right now.
Oh, everybody's talking about grit. Yeah.
Everybody. And I think that it's just, I don't know, when you ask, it's just sort of don't quit. And I've had this conversation a lot on this podcast about people who at a young age don't know when to quit. And I think sometimes that can lead you into bitterness and into feeling like the world isn't fair. And into, you know, and like, and that is a really scary thing because it can ruin what could have been next for you, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's, you did a really good job at breaking down the different arguments on that. Yeah. So the top line sort of big question is, how do you know when to quit and when to keep going?
I mean, you know, it's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost, everybody always says, you know, it's like, you know, never quit. And it's like, no, we all need to quit stuff. You only got 24 hours in a day. You keep adding things, you're not going to make hours left. Yeah. So we all quit things. It's a matter of, you know, the things we care about. And there's this great idea, as Gabrielle Ottingen, who's a professor at NYU, talked about, where she did the research, and it's WOOP, WOOP, you know, where it's wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. Yeah. And because what the research shows is we always think it's like dream, and dreams are great, but if we leave it at dreams, you know, your brain is not great at telling fiction from reality. That's why movies are exciting. Yeah. You know, it's like we kind of get drawn in. So when we dream, it actually lowers our motivation to go out there and do it because our brain is like, oh, I already got it. Because we're not so good at that. Yeah. But, you know, dreaming's fun. It just has to be the first step. So it's like, wish, what am I dreaming about? What do I want? Then you got to crystallize it. That's outcome. How am I going to get that? What is the actual thing? So it's like you say, you know, oh, yeah, I want to make some money. Okay, well, what's the job? What's the business? Crystallize it. That's the outcome I want. Then comes the hard part, obstacle. What is in the way? Why don't I have that? What do I need to do? And then once you consider that, then you can start to make a plan. Yeah. Once you make the plan, you can execute on it. Now, what was really cool is this is a great little system for getting from your dreams to how you can actually achieve them. But the secondary effect that was fascinating was the idea that this also became a litmus test because how people emotionally responded to the WOOP exercise. Yeah. If somebody did the WOOP exercise and they said, oh, here's my dream, here's the outcome I want, there's an obstacle I have to face, and here's my plan for overcoming it. If they did that and they felt energized and they were like, oh, I'm going to go do it, that was probably something that was going to work. Yeah. Versus if somebody had, oh, this wish, I want this thing, here's the outcome, here's the obstacle, my plan's not really that, that's not gonna. That was something where it's like, okay, you either need to have a different wish, because this isn't realistic, or you need to come up with a different plan for overcoming that obstacle.
Or but maybe make your wish smaller, I think, a lot of times.
Just something more realistic, and maybe you can build to that later. But it's like, but if somebody felt like, this is crazy, that was actually a valuable signal. They could hear that and they could say, okay, I need to reevaluate. So going through that exercise can actually tell you, you know what, the current thing I'm being gritty at, it's a great idea or maybe not such a great idea.
Yeah. So cool, man. I love all the tests too. Like there's a lot of things where a lot of these points are tested in different research where they have groups of people and they measure their energy levels and their excitement levels and how they actually perform on certain tests. And a lot of it just goes back to sort of the messages they were telling themselves. So a big thing on that is you talk about, a big thing is positive self-talk, right? And that's really big right now too. And that's something that I think, even for me, my eyes have been open to recently in a strange way, where now I find myself checking myself when I'm thinking negatively. And I think that's step one in mastering it. You know, I'm far off. But I noticed, like, damn, there's a lot of times throughout the day that you're shitting on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
No. That's really critical is when we hear so much about, like, you know, mindfulness and, you know, coming from meditation, originates in Buddhism, but you know, a lot of the research is showing this is accurate, is that we're so quick to hear that voice in our head, those feelings, and to identify with it. And this, you know, a simple explanation of mindfulness is to realize that, you know, it's like, if I broke my arm, I would say my arm is broken. If there's something going wrong in my head, you know, I think I'm broken.
Yeah, it's you.
No, it's like your brain, your arm, well, sometimes it'll hurt, sometimes it'll awkward, but that's your arm. Well, your brain generates thoughts. Sometimes those thoughts make no sense. And you know that. We all think silly things. It's your brain's job to generate thoughts. You don't have to identify with all of those, because we all dismiss, hey, man, I said something stupid, I was drunk. Hey, I said something stupid, I was tired, I was hungry, I was cranky. You are saying that everything that comes out of your head is not necessarily you. And so exactly what you said, the first step is, rather than having a thought in your head and going, oh, that's me, that's who I am, or having a feeling and saying, oh, that's, is to step back from it and to go, wait a second, I'm generating all kinds of thoughts all day long. Which ones do I want to identify with? Which ones do I want to pick? Because if I'm in the morning, it's early, I'm tired, I might have some negative thoughts. Late at night, I might have some negative thoughts. Is that me, or is that just my brain's generating stuff?
I wake up every morning feeling like I am worthless. I have no ability. I have no talent. I am screwed. I get to the first 3 sips of cup of coffee number 2, and I am Warren Buffett. You know what I mean? And I know that about myself now. And so I try to work on waking up and, like, first going to, like, I started trying to meditate the moment I wake up. Because just trying to figure out why that is, and actually in a healthy way, without coffee, get rid of that. But it's something that I've noticed about myself. So I don't wake up in the morning stressed and thinking, like, believing it. You just know, like, okay, I'm gonna wake up in this storm of shit until I get that coffee in me, and then I'm good.
Absolutely. And that's what you see, is that, like, you know, is that sometimes we feel good, sometimes we don't feel good. It's like you're never going to eliminate that. You know, you're never going to totally get rid of that. And the more you push against it, actually is just kind of creating this feedback loop. Versus when I spoke to Joseph Goldstein, who's one of the biggest voices in mindfulness, he said it's more that issue of stepping back, looking at the thoughts, looking at the feelings, and then asking yourself a very simple question. Is this useful? You know, is this going to take me where I want to go? This anger, this sadness, this whatever, you know, is this something I want to identify with, or, you know, do I want to recognize that, accept it? It's there. Okay, cool. But I don't have to choose to engage with it. I can step back and I can say, hey, you know what? There's another thing I want to put my attention on. Because the issue of attention with happiness, with anything, attention is critical. It's one of the things that meditation and mindfulness teach. Because if you think, there's tons of awful stuff going on in the world right now. There's tons of awful stuff in our lives. And there's tons of good stuff. And you can choose to pay attention to whatever you like. And sometimes we drift to one side or the other, but rather than having it be random, for us to see these thoughts kind of bubble up in our head and to just step back for a second and go, all right, who do I want to pay attention to? Which of these is useful to me? You know, that's how you can really get that distance. You can make the most of that.
You can just change your life. I mean, that's the part to me that I, at 30 years old, think that my biggest priority would be to get better at that. I don't want to say master that, because I don't know that you ever fully can, but just realizing that it's in your control is just such a breakthrough. Like I said, for me, one of my biggest things is I was never taught any mindset practice, meditation, none of that. It was always looked at as kind of weird and quirky my whole life. And it wasn't until the last year or so that I've really been getting into it and looking at it and kind of seeing, okay, you know what of this do I believe? What of this can I buy into? What is, you know, and like the more I go, it's just like I said, or like you said, like if you, similar example, if you woke up in the morning and your arm was sore,
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, my arm's sore. I must have slept on it weird. Something's off. You'd
Yeah.
stretch.
Yeah.
You'd whatever. You'd figure it out. You'd put
Yeah.
ice on it.
Yeah.
But if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling like a
Yeah.
terrible person and the world is caving in on you, you just think,
Yeah.
that's me. And I think like, just, I don't know, man. I don't even know how to put it into words, but getting better at recognizing that difference, recognizing that it's in your control. You can decide and work on the thoughts that you want to focus on and what direction that takes your entire life. Because that changes your entire life.
Oh, it completely changes things, because one of the other things is like, meditation helps in terms of training that attention. You can direct your attention where you want it to. It helps you let go of those thoughts, because what you so often find is that we just get lost in thought.
Yeah.
It's like you're not here in this room, you're worried about this thing, and to just step back, it's like when you follow your breath, meditation teaches you to return to sensation, to return to, here's the world, here's where I am, versus this just running commentary that's going on, and to just step back from it for a second, and to just be like, I'm worried about something that happened 10 years ago that I can't change, or I'm terrified about something 10 years from now that may or may not happen, versus being right here, right now, this is the world, I'm not caught in this crazy narrative that I'm generating. And when you step back from it, you look at your day, and you can realize that, holy crap, I get this thought in my head, and I get all worked up, and I get so upset, and I get everything. Oh, and then I'm worried about something else. And that you can do this all day long, where this is the worst thing in the world. Oh my God, I'm so scared. Oh no, here's another thing. This is the worst thing in the world. And we never step back and go, I just did that 30 times. 30 different things were the worst thing in the world. It's like, that's not possible. It's like to step back and realize what's actually important. Where do I really need to be? And to realize that, your brain is always throwing stuff up there. And it's, what do you choose to give your attention to, that everything that comes up, I don't have to identify with it. That's not me. That's my brain.
That's so cool. I think in the next, this is just my forecast, tell me if you agree or not, I think in the next like 10 years, I would say 5 years, but like this sort of way of thinking and meditation and that stuff is going to make a huge leap. Like it's big in the app world right now, but I think like the same way you drive around and see like Soul Cycles and juice bars, I think you'll see meditation places and mindfulness. Like I know that it's making big progress even in like the military and in certain office buildings and stuff, but it blows my mind that, for instance, a guy like me growing up in Akron, Ohio, high school education only, but even if I would have went to college, would have never heard anything about any of this.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like you're taught physical stuff. You're in phys ed in middle school, but you're not in mindset course. You know what I mean?
No,
and it's,
nobody's teaching. They're teaching you what to think about. They're not teaching you how to think. Where those whole kind of, because only recently are we seeing the research on this, where where all of a sudden we have proof, because rather than because Buddhism's a religion, so it's like people don't want to say, oh, it's a different religion. I might believe something different, but just like yoga comes from Hinduism, but that just because you do yoga doesn't mean you're Hindu. Well, what we can learn from Buddhism, the idea of mindfulness, that's not religious. That's something that anybody can kind of use. And now they're doing fMRI studies and neuroscience studies where we're seeing that it does change your brain. When you do this little practice, much like lifting weights, changes your body, changes your muscles. One of the most powerful things it does, you see it a lot in Buddhism, and now you see it in the research on mindfulness and the research in neuroscience, is the idea of reactivity. Is like when I talk about stepping back from those thoughts. Because so often there's a stimulus, something happens to us, and boom, we immediately respond. Okay, well, that means you're not thinking. That just means you are just, you're like a machine. This happens, you respond. What if the response isn't good? Versus when you meditate, when you're able to step back from your thoughts, you can create that gap. And in that gap, you can say, how do I want to respond to this? And that's really critical. I remember there was a book I read one time on it was written by a bouncer, and he was talking about fighting. He's talking about fighting, and he said the guy who's not good at fighting, he looks at another dude and he says, can I take him? The guy who's good at fighting looks at a dude and says, how am I going to take him? there's that level of thinking, you know, as opposed to yes or no, black and white, reactivity, it happens, I need to respond, versus stepping back and saying, here's the situation.
Yeah.
There is a good and a bad way to respond.
Yep.
Which way am I going to do it? And by meditating, by practicing mindfulness, opening up that gap, you give yourself a chance to actually be something that's thinking, that's choosing, as opposed to merely reacting. And then you look back and you're like, what did I do?
Yep. Ah, so true. I just want to mention this one too, because we were talking about my Memento Mori tattoo, and you have Ryan's Memento Mori coin in your pocket. You talk in this about the action of, or the sort of practice of picturing your own funeral, and that sort of helping that, letting that dictate sort of where you put your time and your energy.
Absolutely.
And your, and that stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about the theory behind that?
Yeah, there's some research on what's called mortality salience, which is basically, thinking about death, which certainly doesn't sound pleasant.
Yeah.
But when you look around, again, it's like, we see the ancient Stoics talked about this. We see in research, I'm talking about mortality salience. There's that classic Stanford graduation speech by Steve Jobs, where he said the most valuable thing I do is realizing that I'm going to die, because we live so much of our lives, understandably, just acting like it's never going to end. And when we realize that there is a beginning, there is a middle, there is an end, that all times aren't created equal, in our lives, it really shifts our perspective. And the research shows our perspective really shifts, versus this kind of in the moment, spontaneous, to actually sitting down and thinking, how do I want people to remember me? How do I want people to think about me? Because David Brooks, in his book, The Road to Character, he talked about two types of values we have. We have resume values, where you're saying, okay, what have I achieved? As my education, my career, and we're generally pretty good at those, because we all have to, go out and either have a job or convince somebody to invest in us or something. We're good at that. What we're not good at is the eulogy values, where if you sit back and you say, okay, one day I'm gonna die. There's gonna be a funeral, and the people who love me they're gonna stand up and they're gonna say good things about me. What do I want those things to be? Because I've got a little bit of time, maybe a lot of time if I'm lucky, to actually develop those qualities and share those things, and to build that reputation, because the stories are the operating system of the human mind. Stories are how if you think about anything, it's like if I ask you, what have you been up to? If I ask you, how did you get here? How did you build this business? It's a story. And stories are just critical. So when you even look, John Gottman, who does all the research on relationships, what he found is the best predictor of whether a couple's going to stay together or get divorced is just ask them to tell their story. Is it optimistic? Did they overcome challenges? Or is it like, we're still together, it's okay.
It's all ball and chain.
Exactly, exactly. And that story, is really critical. And what we realize when you think about, at some point, life is going to end, you realize you get to craft that story. You get to build that story. So to really think about life like that, there's going to be an end. Okay, my life's going to be like a movie. What do I want it to be about? What lesson do I want people to learn? What do I want do I want the main character to be a good guy or a bad guy? I mean, to really think about that, it really changes who we are and changes how we act, because it changes how we see ourselves.
And I think one big thing, that the way you put it, the way you wrote it, it just made me really realize that so much of this stuff is in your control. It's like the mindfulness thing. It's like taking the moment to say, well, wait a minute, how do I want to act to this? Well, also take a minute and say, how am I talking to myself throughout the day? Is it positive, negative? Take a moment and say, well, what is my story? Is it positive or negative? Because the same way that you might take a second and tell your story and you're like, that didn't sound too cool.
No.
You can reframe it, and you can repaint the picture, and you can say, wait a minute. No, this is my story, and this is who I am, and this is what I stand for. And just doing those exercises and acting that way as that sort of new person or new character in the movie can change your entire life.
Oh, it is. This stuff is all super exciting, super exciting to me.
I could go for 5 hours.
No, dude, it's like, no, I could this is the stuff where I get all, because it's like you hear a lot of stuff about people talking about this, your subconscious and everything, and that's where things can get kind of murky. They can get kind of pseudoscience, But the truth is, it's like there is, subconscious, but very much for the most part, it's hard for us to reach it. It's hard for us to unlock. It's something that accumulates. But some of the research that's really fascinating is how we can dig it. Because you tell yourself things and then you find, I don't follow through on them. That's really not what, or you hear those thoughts and you're kind of like, where did that come from? Oh, this didn't work out. I wish I was dead. It's like, well, what?
Like,
holy
what?
crap.
Yeah.
You know, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but what you see is that there's some great techniques we can actually use to actually kind of access that subconscious story we're telling ourselves in a scientifically proven way. There's a guy at University of Texas at Austin, Jamie Pennebaker, and he's done this research on expressive writing, and it is amazing. Like, it shows results, everything from people, you know, sleeping better at night, feeling better about themselves, to actually like health benefits, where basically what people are doing is, in all the research, especially on happiness, that talking to yourself, when we're ruminating, we're just like dwelling on something over and over again, that is almost consistently negative. That's like leads to just depression. I'm going over and over and I can't get this out of my head. That is almost always negative. But when you sit down for 20 minutes and you just write what's going on in your mind, you just write it down. 20 minutes, do it 4 days in a row, you see huge changes. Because when you write, you actually need to structure it. It's not this rambling commentary. And just by structuring your thoughts and kind of saying, here's what's going on in my head, you start to make sense of it. And that starts to access deeper levels where I'm giving it meaning. It's not these random things. I feel like I'm in a terrible situation. I'm giving it meaning. I'm giving it a story. I'm restructuring because writing makes you sit down and put things in order and talk about cause and effect and your feelings. And all of a sudden, that starts changing your story. The other critical way, if people don't like to want to sit down and write about it, is Timothy Wilson at University of Virginia did this thing where he talked about act good, be good. Where if you feel like, hey, I don't feel good about my life. I don't feel good about what I'm doing. I don't feel good about who I am. He talked about go out and be something. Go out and you don't feel like you're a good person? Go volunteer. Go help people. Because what will happen is if you start to act differently, you're going to have trouble lying to yourself and telling yourself, if you go out and help people 1 day a week, every week, and people say, what have you been up to? Oh, well, yesterday I was volunteering. It's like, well, then it's going to be really hard for you to say, oh, yeah, I was volunteering all day.
But I'm a piece
jerk.
of shit.
It's like, no, you're not. Dude, you spend every Sunday, like, helping kids? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And then you're going to start to revise your story because, hey, I'm helping people. I'm doing this. So it's like if you go out there and do good, you're gonna feel good about yourself.
Yeah, man. I just think getting out in front of it and taking control of it is so big. And it's like, I don't know, man. So much of this stuff, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but so much of this stuff is you just think if you feel like a bad person, you're a bad person. And you know what? I'm a bad person. And I'm kind of at I'm at the mercy of these thoughts. And it's like seeing those tools of like, okay, like you said, then go volunteer. And even the smiles on people's faces and the responses that you get from doing that, you're gonna be like, oh shit, like I'm kind of a good person, you know? And I don't know, breaking that down was big to me.
No, there's two different systems that people can look at that are helpful. Mindfulness is the idea of stepping back. Mindfulness is the idea of, rather than I am that thought, stepping back, looking and choosing. Is it useful? And then from cognitive behavioral therapy, which comes from Stoicism, Ryan, is the idea of challenging those thoughts. Is the idea of, oh, my life's crap. Why is my life crap? Oh, well, because I did it. Is that really the case? Just questioning. And what you start to find is that some of your beliefs are irrational. They don't make sense. And by questioning them, then you can improve them. Or you can say, what is more accurate? Or if that is a problem, what can I do about it? So it's like that idea of either choosing to step back and pick, or that idea of challenging your thoughts.
Huge. Chapter 4, another big fan of this topic. It's not what you know, but who you know. Very common, big debate. And that's not even a question. That's just a statement. People have taken that to now. That is just the fact. It's not what you know, but who you know. It's also used, I see a lot, as an excuse. Right? And it's a lot of when people are, they blame it on their circumstances, or they say, well, I'm smart, I'm talented, I just wasn't given the relationships, or you know what I'm saying? Or I wasn't born into this family, or I wasn't born with a X amount of money, or whatever it is. So once again, I'm just going to shoot you with the super high level one. which one is it? Is it what you know, or is it who you know?
In the end, it's both.
Yeah.
You know, in the end, it's critical. There's the playwright David Mamet has this great line I love where he says, "If you're smarter than the other guy, be smarter than the other guy." You know, where it's like, okay, it's like you're smart, great. Are you following through on that? Are you doing something with it? Are you making the right choices?
Yeah.
And you have that issue where kind of what you talked about with introverts and extroverts. You know, extroverts are out there, they draw energy from other people, so they're naturally going out there, making friends. So more serendipitous things happen to them, positive things happen to them because they're out there. There is. Richard Wiseman did research on luck, like the science of luck. Yeah. And what he found is that extroverts are more lucky. Why? Because they're putting themselves out there, and more opportunities are coming their way because they're talking to people. Yeah. So, hey, who you know is important because, you know, I would, you know, from an entrepreneurial perspective, I would look at it like the two different critical sides of a company. Mm-hmm. You have product development. You have to have something you're actually selling. Yep. And you have marketing. Yep. If you build a great product, you don't tell anybody about it, well, it's not going to sell very well. Yeah. Okay, well, there's introversion and extroversion. Yeah. You know, introverts, they're not going to all the parties. So if they use their time wisely, they're great at skill development. Yep. They can build the product that is them. They can really bear down, get good at something because, you know, time in the trenches. Yeah. You know, the research shows a disproportionate number of top athletes are actually introverts. Yep. You know, because even with team sports, you need to spend that time, you know, doing those jump shots. You need to spend the time, you know, it's like in the batting cage. Yeah. So skill development's like product development in there, but you also have to have marketing. If you have great skills, you don't tell anybody, you're not going to get hired, you're not going to build that company, you got to get out there. Yep. So both are really critical. And hey, if you are naturally an extrovert, great. Focus on building that network. You want to spend some time to develop your skills so that when you get the chance to meet that super person who can help you, that you've got something to offer. Yeah. But on the flip side, you know, hey, if you're somebody who's introverted, you're focusing on what you do, you need to spend a little bit of time to get the word out so that people can say, damn, you know, this guy's something, you know, I want to be working with him.
Yeah. I also think the awareness of like who you team up with. You know, I think somebody recently asked me, you know, they said exactly that. I'm an entrepreneur, I have this great idea, but I'm very introverted by nature. What do I do? Yeah. You know, and I think that the advice from me at least is two. It's one, realize that you're introverted and go be a little extroverted. Yeah. Also, was it in this book where you talk about the fact that neither of those things really even exist? It's just sort of a name and a label that we put on.
I mean, the introversion, extroversion goes pretty deep. Like,
but meaning like, we like to say, I'm an introvert, and that is it. Meaning that it's not a skill set that can be worked on.
Oh, no, that absolutely. You can develop.
Yeah, as opposed to saying, like, really where the truth kind of is. I mean, obviously, yes, it's a part of your personality, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, at least what I tell myself, maybe I'm lying to myself, is I get sort of anxious and feel out of place in social situations. Yep. Okay, I acknowledge that that is a weakness of mine. So by working on it and stepping out of my comfort zone, I can actually build my ability to feel more comfortable in those situations and lessen my anxiety.
You absolutely can. Yeah. I mean, you know, by putting yourself out there and seeing time and time again, nobody made fun of me. Yeah. I didn't have any problem. Your anxiety will lessen by saying, geez, you know, these conversations are awkward. Okay, well, what is the thing that connects people? And the research shows very often it's similarity. Yeah. But there's many different kinds of similarity. Yeah. You know, we grew up in the same state. We like the same things. But similarity becomes huge. It's like by addressing each one of those steps, by saying, oh, I feel anxious. Okay, well, if you put yourself out there and you see that nothing happened, anxiety comes down. Yeah. Conversations are awkward. Okay, what makes good conversation? Okay, part of it is similarity. You know, part of it is... So just addressing each of those issues, no, you can totally build those skills. Yeah. You know, it's just looking at what the problems are, finding the solutions. No, and I talk in the book, I talk about, you know, like what people have to do to kind of build that. Yeah. And it's really, but both are critical. Yeah. It's like you need to, I talk about, you know, how having a big network is just phenomenal in terms of getting hired, getting promoted. There's even research on drug dealers. Research on drug dealers, where drug dealers who have bigger networks make more money and are less likely to get incarcerated. Yeah. But on the flip side, like I said, top athletes, you know, it's like you can tell what a kid's grade, how high or kids' grades are going to be by their level of introversion. Because more introverted a kid is, more he's going to study. Yeah. It's like, you know, PhDs more likely to be introvert. There's benefits to both. But really the key first step, like you're saying, is understanding this is who I am. This is who I am. And once you know that, then you can say, hey, how do I build this out so that it's the best it can be? And how do I compensate for my weaknesses?
Yeah. I think, and that was my thing, was like the combination of compensate for the weaknesses, go out, build on that a little bit, get over that anxiety, blah, 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 and also find somebody who's a great marketer.
Yeah.
Like those two people finding each other, I think some of the greatest successes, at least in business, in history, have to have come from the introvert and the extrovert teaming up. Because sometimes you can't be Superman, you can't do it all.
No.
Maybe you can't write this genius book and get over the fear of going out and promoting it.
Yeah.
But if you found the perfect guy that's your marketing guy that just crushes it, like that combination is also huge.
Oh, what you see among most of the best business pairings is that they're not redundant, they're complementary.
Yeah.
It's not I'm good at this and so is he.
Yeah.
It's I'm good at X, he's good at Y.
Yeah.
And then you get the superpower, kind of combination there. And actually, was it Bob Sutton at Stanford? He teaches at the Graduate School of Business. He had case after case where it's like, Steve Jobs was really great at making sure the products were fantastic. He made sure to have good marketing people around him. It's like you see with Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. It's like they're handling different things. Any of those top business leaders, what we see is they're very good at knowing what they're good at, what they're not good at.
It's that clarity.
And then they surround themselves with people who balance them out. They know what they need to address, and then they have other people address that. Because consistently, so much of the research, most of this you see from like Peter Drucker, who's a great management thinker, was that, you don't want to have super weaknesses that are just crippling to you. But your time is much better spent taking the things you're good at and making yourself even better than working too much on your weaknesses, because then you just get to average versus being awesome at something. And your weaknesses, you don't want to be too bad, but working on your weaknesses, it's really hard, it's difficult, you don't get big returns, versus if you're good at something, it's easier to become great. And so, like you're saying, with business, if you're really good at something, you identify that, I'm weak over here, you know what, my time is best spent taking what I'm good at and being awesome, and then hiring and surrounding myself with people who are awesome at those other things, and then we're all awesome together.
Yep, it's so true. It's just that, once again, that clarity. I think a lot of times people look at these, including myself, you look at these big business people or these really successful people, and you think, well, they must just be good at everything. Right. So if I'm introverted and I get anxiety about going to this event, I'm not them. I'll never be them. And it sort of becomes this like unclimbable mountain to be a successful person. And I think like you're saying, what a lot of those people are actually good at is not everything, but is knowing the difference and filling those gaps and having that clarity. And
I think that's one of the reasons why it's so great and so possible to be an entrepreneur today is in the past, when you look at like, the corporations that were around 100 years ago, so you're going to look at like GE or, GM. Or basically, every company needed to do everything.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we have to have product development. We have to have marketing. We have to have operations. We have to versus now, hey, I want to get my site on the internet. Oh, well, Amazon Web Services, that handles all this. Okay, FedEx handles shipping. I can outsource to all these different companies, and I can cluster them together like a constellation of all these different services that are really good at what they do. So rather than me saying, I need to build this monolithic corporation, I need to hire all these people who are experts in their field, no, I just need to find these different services. They're good at that. Let them handle that. I'm going to do the one critical thing that I'm awesome at that makes me special. Again, like signature strengths. I'm going to do the one thing I'm awesome at, and then I can use these fantastic services that are all around, and they'll do what they're awesome at. And I don't need to worry about that other stuff. So between, like you said, hiring the right people and finding the right outsourced services, it's easier to be an entrepreneur than ever.
I love it. I love too, you told the story about Judd Apatow where he started interviewing comedians, and that's kind of how he built his network. It's like, he managed to, as a kid, he just started calling comedians and saying, I want to interview you. And their PR people and agents didn't realize that he was still in high school. And so he would show up with this like battered old high school audio recorder, 17-year-old pimply face.
And, you know, at this point, like the 80s, comedians weren't as big a deal. So they were like, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so he got to know, you know, it's like he basically got to cover the whole thing. He learned his trade, he learned his skills, because he's basically getting lessons from these comedians. He's building a network in the sense of now he knows all of these people in this industry.
Yeah.
And third, he got mentors.
Yep.
He got people who, going forward, he could say, I don't know how to do this. How do I? And they could say, whoa, don't make the mistakes I made.
Yeah.
And they could go out and they could tell him how to get better. So he was able to build his skills, build his network, and get mentors who would guide him as his career grew. And this is a guy who, I mean, obviously it's like, you know, knocked up, 40-year-old virgin. It's like he's been incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, he put himself out there, and he had some balls. I mean, that helped.
100%.
He had some balls.
Yeah.
But it's like he put himself out there, and you know he achieved amazing results.
I think I really related to it because I feel a little bit like that's what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Right? Is I'm building a podcast about interviewing people that I connect with and entrepreneurs and blah blah, which I believe that, you know, when I'm 50, I'll have different businesses and different people that I look at as mentors, or maybe one day I want to write a book and I'll call you to give me some advice, or you know, and it'll be from sort of doing this thing. You know, I really, when I read that, I'm like, maybe, you know, that's part of why I like this thing so much. And Ryan, once again, our boy, before he knew that he would want to write books, and so he started his mailing list of suggesting books. And so when it came time, it's all a very similar thing, right? Where it's kind of like, if you know that this is the craft that you want to be in, but maybe you're not ready to have your comedy special or your big book yet, just get involved and build an audience or build relationships or something, some way.
Absolutely, just be out there doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the big difference. You know, where it's like, are you reaching people? Are you building your skills? You know, where it's kind of like versus passively sitting back and watching it. Are you engaging in it and doing it? And like you said, most of all, is engaging with people. Is it your network? Is it your mentors? Is it your fans? But any one of those, you can really start to build this thing around you where it grows and it builds a momentum of its own.
Yeah.
And that's in the end. That's where things get really crazy.
Yeah.
Is once things start building, you can even step back and it keeps growing.
Yep. I love it. You also cover in the very end, you cover about of this chapter, you cover mentors and how to find them and how to work with them and how to not let them down. And I think mentorship is another buzzword that I'm hearing a lot lately. I think that's an accurate one. I support that. And I also think it's more than ever easier now than ever to find mentors.
Absolutely.
'Cause you can connect with people on social media and blah, blah, blah. But you do a really good job at breaking down how to find them, how to work with them, how to not be an asshole, how to make them proud, you know, like how that relationship should go.
Yeah.
You know?
So, I mean, it's really critical in terms of building your network to, you know, first of all, to have a network, because with mentors, the best way is to have a warm introduction.
Yep.
If somebody knows that person. So in building your network, you know, two really useful things is, number one, to reconnect with old friends.
Yep.
You know, it's the easiest thing in the world, because some of us feel slimy when we're networking, but it's like, it's not slimy if it's somebody you just haven't talked to in a while.
Yeah.
Boom, you just expanded your network.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to do anything. Second is super connectors. Those are those people where if you look at your contact list in your phone, you're going to see that, like, there's a handful of people that introduced you to a disproportionate number of your friends. Those are like the hubs of the network. Reconnecting with those people, talking to those people is going to give you bigger results.
Yeah.
And then hopefully those people might be able to get you a warm introduction to a mentor. But beyond that, to be able to now, like you said, Twitter, email, there's ways to reach people, to reach out. And you know what you really want to focus on is, first and foremost, being ready for the mentor.
Yep.
That's really critical, because you know, anybody who you're going to want to have as your mentor is going to be successful.
Yep.
They're going to be busy.
Yep.
And that means they don't have time for the most general questions that you could Google.
The amount of DMs that I get that are like, hey, man, I have a great idea. Hit me back.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, come on. Like,
help me out here.
Yeah, like, just
meet me halfway.
Give me the hard pitch. And let me, you know what I mean? I would love to help, but like, I can't get into like a small talk of,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just bad, strategy.
I mean, that's critical, is where it's like, never ask a mentor a question that you can Google.
Yep.
It's like, if you can Google it, Google it. Basically, what any because I think there's like the negative and the positive. The negative is when somebody gives you just hit me back, where it's like, okay, dude, like, I don't have time. I'm like, come on. It's like, that's a negative, where you could have just Googled this, or you could have just, versus, I mean, a lot of people write to me, and when somebody writes to me and they say, I'm very curious about this. Well, so first I tried X. That didn't work. Then I tried Y. That gave me this, but I didn't really know about this. So then I looked at that. This didn't work out. I think this might be the answer, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm writing back to that guy.
That's a dream come true.
Because you did your homework. Holy crap.
Yeah.
That. But when somebody says, hey, you ever written anything on happiness? Dude, there's a search function on my blog. Come on. 30 seconds, pal. 30 seconds.
Yeah.
How do you find the door out of the house in the morning? Like, come on.
It's so true.
It's like, versus when somebody says, well, I searched this, I looked at that, you had this. These two things didn't line up. I didn't know how that connected. So I looked around and I saw it, but I wasn't positive, so I thought I'd ask you. Oh, hey, you spent the time.
Yeah.
It's like, versus, because the issue there is the time.
Yep.
If somebody's saying, I'm going to spend an hour so that you can take 1 minute to reply, versus somebody saying, I'm going to take 1 minute so that you can do an hour of work to reply to me.
Yep.
That's somebody that's just dumping it on you, versus somebody that's saying, I did as much as somebody at my level could possibly do, and I hit the wall. The only way for me to get this question answered is to come to somebody like you, who has achieved as much and knows as much as you do. And that's why I'm asking you.
100%.
Then you feel like, okay, then it's like, all right, I got to clear for an hour because I need to help this person. You did the homework, young Jedi. You did the homework. Let me do what I can, because then you're like, you've got that. Because anybody who's been successful and has achieved, they had to bust their ass. They had to work hard. So when you see somebody doing that, you relate to them. Again, how do you connect with people? Similarity. This person is this person's going to be an A player. This person's going to be awesome because they're doing the work. I relate to that. I wish when I was in that position, somebody would have helped me. So I'm going to help you. It's like getting that connection with somebody. It makes all the difference when you're trying to find mentors.
Oh, you do it so well, man. And I've even noticed, like, for me, like, if somebody comes up and says, hey, man, how do I start a company? It sounds like just purely a favor. Like, hey, man, can you, like you said, can you do some work for me? But if somebody comes up and says, hey, I tried this company, my e-commerce isn't really working, I actually enjoy that. Like, that's a gift for me. I like having the conversation. And I like, even if I don't think I'm right or don't know that I'm right, I like sharing my thoughts. I like saying, well, maybe try this, maybe try that. That's where I find joy. So now it doesn't feel like strictly a gift from me to you or some work that I have to do for you. It's like, I'm getting value out of it by running my brain through the exercise.
It's you gave me a puzzle to solve.
Wow.
Versus like, oh, where should I buy this? It's like, okay, if I can put it on an FAQ page, if I can just have frequently, like, here's where to do this, here's where to do that. Okay, then don't bother me with that. Versus if somebody says, here's this unique situation where I tried this didn't work, but this option's over here, and it makes you first I go,
like,
oh, wait a second.
Hold on.
How would I handle that?
We'll get to the bottom of it.
Then all of a sudden it's kind of, I mean, that's not what I'm doing, but I am curious. And then, if it gets your brain chewing on it, but
it's fun.
some general question, it's not gonna make you want to reach out.
So good. Okay, chapter 5, you talk about believing in yourself. You talk about confidence and sort of the good and bad. I mean, you don't have to tell the whole story, but I love you told the chess story because it's a really good explanation of what happens, which is a guy, the best chess player in the world,
Garry Kasparov,
was playing a computer simulation called Deep Blue. And Deep Blue made this really crazy move, and it threw his whole game off. And he didn't know. He thought, man, this computer program knows something I don't. It did some crazy move that I would have never guessed, and it threw the whole game off. He ended up losing the series, right? It turned out that the computer wasn't doing some crazy new move. It was simply a glitch in the system. And by not recognizing a glitch, it got inside his head, and he lost a series that he otherwise probably would have won had he not just had his confidence rattled. And it's something I'm fascinated by. I'm a massive fan of Floyd Mayweather, only because of his ability to just get in the other guy's head. Like, his mind game strategy is unlike anything else. Same as trash talking in sports, same as all that stuff. And I think that you writing it down and breaking it down was really, I really enjoyed it. I think I guess to get into it, it's like, what sort of, once again, I'm asking these big questions and just kind of get into it with me, but where's the balance between self-confidence and quote unquote delusion being positive and it being negative and potentially unraveling your whole plan?
I mean, the thing is that, is that confidence is extremely powerful. There's no, if anybody's had any doubt about it, because that's one of the trickier things in the book is where it's like introversion, extroversion. Well, you got two teams here. Extroverts will say, no, it's better to be extrovert. Introverts say, no, it's better to be an introvert. Versus nobody writes books on how to be less confident. Nobody runs around saying, I need to reduce my confidence. This doesn't happen. There's like only one team. But there's still this conundrum here. There's this question. And the thing is, it's because we kind of compartmentalize it, where we will say, oh man, that guy's a narcissist, that guy's hubris, he's full of himself. It's kind of, yeah, that's what happens when you got too much confidence. And then on the flip side, we will be critical of not having enough confidence. We'll say, oh my God, he's depressed, whatever. But we also praise people who are humble. We say, oh, just so humble, this guy's really good, always open to new ideas, doesn't think they have all the answers, pleasure to talk to. It's like, so we realize, wait, it's a little bit more complicated than this. It's like, when confidence gets too high, we've all seen somebody who thinks they're amazing, they get out there and make a fool of themselves, because they're deluding themselves. We also see some people who don't walk in strutting their stuff. They listen and they learn. So it's not just simple, confidence always good, don't be. No, that's dangerous. And what we see is that the problem with confidence as a paradigm is that confidence often is either delusional or contingent. Delusional meaning, again, you are telling yourself something that is not true. And that might motivate you, but just on Wall Street, there will be a market correction where this has been overvalued and now we will fix it. Or the other saying I really like, which is, there is no such thing as a pretty good alligator wrestler. Pretty good doesn't cut it, because you're going to find out real fast that you're not as good at that. So it can be delusional, which is dangerous because reality will punch you in the face. Or it can be contingent, and that's when its problem is when every morning you need to wake up and feel like I need to slay a dragon so that I feel good about myself. Every day I need to prove myself so that I feel like I'm a decent human being. And this just keeps you on this treadmill. And one day you're not going to prove yourself, and you're going to feel terrible. And now your self-esteem's on a roller coaster because it's just constantly running on that treadmill. Sometimes you do good, sometimes you don't. And one of the things I talk about in the book that I think really holds some promise here is, rather than focusing so much on self-confidence, where, like I said, it's either going to often be delusional or contingent, is to actually look at self-compassion, which comes from Buddhism, but Kristen Neff at the University of Texas has done research, and self-compassion, so with self-confidence, you're often building yourself up into something you're not, and then sometimes you find out it's not true, versus self-compassion is saying, hey, I'm going to see the world realistically. Everybody's flawed. I'm not perfect. I'm going to forgive myself when I'm not perfect. I'm going to do my best. And a lot of people kind of like step back at that because they think they're going to lose their edge. They think they're going to lose their edge. But what they forget is that often we engage in self-handicapping. Often we say, oh, hey, man, there's that great opportunity. But wait a second. I might fail. I might look stupid. So I'm not going to do it. And now you're holding yourself back from potential opportunities because my self-esteem is on the line. I can't fail. So now, actually, where's your edge? No, now you're operating out of fear because you don't want to look stupid or because you're going to crater your self-esteem. When you say, "Hey, I'm a good person because I'm here, and I'm going to screw up, and that's okay." Once you say, "I'm going to screw up, that's okay," you can go out and you can do that thing, and you can be fearless. You can say, because you know what? This one event is not going to determine whether or not I'm a good human being or whether I have value. And what you see is that self-compassion has no connection to narcissism when you do the studies, whereas self-confidence often leads to delusion and delusion and narcissism. And being able to forgive yourself, you're more likable, you're happier, and you don't get this roller coaster of emotions. You don't feel like you constantly have to prove yourself, and you don't have fear about going out and trying new opportunities because you know how you feel about yourself is not determined by any of these external events.
Yeah. I will say I think of the entire book, that is the thing that stuck with me personally the most. Like, that's the thing I really wrote down and really said, man, you got to work on this. Because I think that especially after reading that, like, I do operate heavily out of the drive for self-confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing I always talk about is the time that I spent on TV was great for me and great for my business and, overall a positive.
Yeah.
But the one negative that I didn't realize because I was young and whatever was, it made me feel like there was so much pressure on me. It made me feel like there was a lot of eyeballs on me, and it made me feel like anything that I did, whether it be a new marketing campaign, a new jacket that we're releasing, or a new podcast, was going to be instantly judged by a lot of people, and I didn't want to hurt my score. And so, like, with the podcast, I procrastinated for, a long time, probably almost a year. And finally, one of my friends said, look, man, put it out, be shitty. And it's the shittiness in the beginning that your fans will ultimately relate to. Because they'll go back and they'll hear you being terrible. And they'll be like, oh, man, I like this guy. Like, we've kind of grown with him. And now the #1 comment that I get on the feedback page is, man, this thing has grown so much. You've really progressed, and and people feel like they know you. You're not some perfect, like, polished thing.
Yeah.
And it's just the way I realize, and I'm still a huge work in progress, but that is 100% the way that I looked at the world. Is like, okay, I've done a pretty good job, but everything I put out, everything I do is a new test.
Yeah.
And if it fails, you failed,
Yeah.
and you're a failure.
Yeah.
And if it wins, and I would go through these, like I said, like I would have one moment where I felt like P. Diddy.
Yeah.
And then you have another moment where you feel like you're going to be homeless tomorrow. And it's like, that's a terrible balance, but it's a work in progress. But that is something, that part of it really stuck with me.
That idea of, there's some people I know who keep lists. They keep lists of failures because, as the old saying goes, if you're not failing, you're not trying enough stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not failing, you're not shooting high enough.
Yep.
Can you imagine, any athlete who had hit 100%, of every time they went out there? Then it's not hard enough.
Yeah.
You're not stretching.
Yeah.
Dude, with my blog, if I go back a few years, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
But you know what? I should be.
Yep.
Because that means I'm growing. That means I'm learning. That's really what you need to do, is kind of that idea of just embracing the idea of nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
And it's like that idea of perfectionism, it's painful.
Yeah.
And you see, like, perfectionism, do you do better? Yeah. But it's like, as I talk about there, the research on maximizers and satisficers, where maximizers, people who say, I absolutely 100% perfectionism, very often, yes, they do better. And you know what? The research also shows they feel worse because all they can see is the failures. And that is not that's when you burn out. That's when you feel bad. Versus saying, hey, it's going to be shitty. I'm going to put it out there and I will get better next time.
Yeah.
It's like, what did you do? You were fearless.
Yeah.
You said, I'm going to go it's going to be shitty. Okay, I'm putting it out there anyway.
Yeah.
Versus if you said, this is my high standard, how are you going to reach that high standard? You got to test, you got to try. And then you did it. And then, like you said, everybody was along with the journey because we can relate to that. We can't relate to perfection. We might idolize perfection. We can't relate to it. What we relate to is, oh my God, I've screwed up too. And I got better. And now I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, he's just like me. Similarity.
It's so true. And I think that's only getting more and more. Like, I think that people's gauge, just their personal gauge for relatability, is authenticity, and like that's just growing so much. Like, we notice, I'm sure you notice it in places in your life, but obviously with all the content and stuff that we do, it's like the shittier the better, and the more real the better. And like we're even doing like Facebook ads and like these real things, and my instinct is to constantly go do a well-produced, well-lit, well-done video. And we see time and time again that a cell phone video shot on an iPhone outperforms it almost every time. And I just think that, like, we're really entering more and more into an age of, you got to show your flaws. Like, you have to be relatable. You have to say, check me out going into this new podcast, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I feel a little nervous. Let's go for it. And then you all win together, you all lose together.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I just feel like that it really connected, and more than ever, I think that's an incredibly valuable
Well, it's like,
thing.
We're in the era of fake news.
Yeah.
It's like we're in the era of just so much stuff where it's like, if it's too shiny, it's too perfect. If it's too smooth, that means people spend a lot of time
scary.
crafting that and doing
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yep.
It starts to look like advertising.
Yep.
Advertising's perfect. It's clean. It's shiny. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's like, and we don't trust advertising. Versus, it's like you said, it's like something relatable. That does get the authenticity because you say, my life doesn't look like James Bond. You know, I mean, I can relate to this guy. It's like, that makes sense to us. And it's like, and we're so desperate these days for anything authentic, anything where it's like, this feels like my life.
Okay, the other thing too, quickly, that you talked about, because these things are fascinating to me, that like these people even exist and you can do research on them, but is SM046, who is a young child?
No, she's a woman. She actually has 2 kids.
Okay, so she's a woman with 2 kids who does not feel fear.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I've heard of people who don't feel pain, which you also talk about.
Yeah.
But this is a woman who just doesn't feel fear, has never been scared.
Yeah.
And I guess, what did you learn from that? Because the way you applied it to this conversation is really interesting.
Well, no, it's really critical. Is the reason she's referred to as SM046 is because the people who have studied her don't like to put her name out there because people take advantage of her because she has been assaulted, because she basically can't function normally as a person. If you spoke to her, she seems normal, she acts normal. But what we forget is that, you know, things that are scary, things that are dangerous, you're not walking around logically saying, oh, I should not go down that alley. That would be a bad idea. No, 90% plus of the time you're going on instinct. And you're immediately going, whoa, dark alley. Hey, no. I'll take the well-lit path. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and this ain't a great neighborhood. We're going on instinct. She doesn't feel fear. She doesn't have that instinct. So this is somebody who has been assaulted multiple times, and she got, I believe she got mugged in a park. She went back to that park the next day because she didn't have the feeling of, normally, rationally or irrationally, you would say, whoa, I'm not going back there. No, she just walked back there again. Why wouldn't I? Because there wasn't that instinctive feeling. And so she's made a lot of really bad choices in her life because she can say, just like you would, hey, it wouldn't be a good idea to cross the highway. I might get hit by a car. She can logically go through that. But instinctively, viscerally, she doesn't say, oh, wait, hey, that's not a good idea. That guy looks scary.
That is fascinating.
So that idea of, we need those checks and balances. There's a good reason we have that emotional system. And in there, I kind of talk about the idea of confidence and everything. And sometimes if you have too much confidence, sometimes you feel utterly fearless. You feel like nothing can go wrong. And bad things happen because you're out of touch with reality.
Oh, cool. I just love the idea of these people that are, because like I said, I think it was chapter 1 or 2, you talk about the girl who doesn't feel pain. And it's like these people that you think on paper, they must be superheroes. But it really is a great case study for you to be able to break down. Like, I think one of my biggest, because I talk about anxiety and those sort of things, I think one of my biggest shortcomings is the fear element. Because essentially that all ties back to being scared of something, right? So it's like, okay, if you could, you think in your head, well, if I could just eliminate all fear, I'd be a Superman. But it's like, well, hold on, let's look at somebody who actually has no fear.
Exactly.
And like, let's really break down like where the happy medium is. It's just cool. It's so cool.
I think it's critical to look at those extremes and to say, it's like that. And it's one of the benefits of mindfulness, is rather than saying, how can I eliminate fear? It's like, you're never going to eliminate fear. But if you can step back and you can say, whoa, fearful thoughts. I see them. Okay. Do I want to roll with that, or do I want to look at other options? I'm feeling that. I understand it. It's there. But do I want to explore that? Do I want to engage with that? No. I'm going to choose this other option over here. I get that I'm feeling that, but I don't have to identify with that. That does not need to be me.
So good. Okay, last chapter. You talk about another hot topic, work-life balance.
Yes. Especially for entrepreneurs.
Especially. And I love that. I love it. And I also think another thing that I'm trying to work on personally, the reason why it resonated so much with me is because I put so much on work
Yeah.
And I just put so much pride. And I remember, like, when I was like 21 or something, there was a Pharrell Williams quote or something where they asked him, like, what does it take to be successful? And he said, to have no social life. And I thought, yeah, that's what it takes. I'm going to have no social life, and I don't care about my friends. And, like, it's just, you know, as you get older, you realize that's not true. That's not healthy. That's not all these things. And so you breaking that down, you broke it down, once again, very, very well. The part that I really, really love is you talking about the athletes and these crazy overachievers that have literally driven themselves crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it was Bobby Fischer. They interviewed him and they said, what could you have done better? And he said, well, I probably could have
had more well-rounded life.
Yeah, more round. And like these people know it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like in the end, it almost seems like always in the end, they know that they did things a little wrong, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, but you just, I don't know, when you're one of those crazy workaholic people, there's just nothing you can do. So I guess my question would be, like, what is the lesson that you kind of learned through all the research of where that proper balance kind of lies?
Yeah, I mean, I feel just like you do, man, because when I was writing that chapter, I was working too hard.
Yep.
I'm writing about work-life balance,
Yeah.
and I'm not having much work-life balance, and I'm not exploring my relationships. And when you look at the research, consistently, the bulk of our happiness comes from our relationships. When people burn out, a good reason for that is they are not having good relationships. But we get caught in this almost addictive spiral where you work hard, you get rewarded, and hey, that feels good. And maybe you're not spending as much time on your relationships. So your friends are maybe a little pissed at you. So you go hang out with your friends. It's not very rewarding because they're not. Oh, so let me double down on the thing that is rewarding. And you get into this vicious circle where, you know, okay, I'm only getting rewarded at work, but they're different things, you know? It's like you need to have that relationship. And the problem is the modern era is it's so skewed because you look at the research, you know, all other things being equal, you work harder, you get more results. Okay, well, that says work harder. And then, you know, it's like you look on TV, you look on the internet, there's these insane standards. We get to see that one person in 7 billion who has made so much money and is so good looking and has such an awesome car and they're smart and they've got everything. So all of a sudden, you know, you've got standards through the roof. And then you consistently say, if you work harder, you do better. And that can just keep you going. And now, before, you could say, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, hey, you know, office closes at 5 p.m. Oh, sorry, I'll have to do that for you tomorrow. Got to go home, see my family, spend time with my friends. Oh, no. You got your phone.
Yeah, because you leave the office phone. You leave the office phone. You leave there is not even any email in those. The mailbox.
Have to get it for you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And now it's like the documents are in the cloud. The texts are coming 24/7. You know, it creates this nonstop kind of preference. And so that's why with the issue of success, it's like you before the world would tell you 5 p.m. stop. Go spend time with your social life, your friends. Now the world says don't stop. If you ask the world will say keep going. So it's on us to draw a line, and that's hard to do, especially when you're being rewarded for your work. More hours equals more success. It's hard to draw that line, but you know we have to do it. We have to say, you know, when is enough. And when Nash and Stevenson, 2 researchers at Harvard, when they looked at people who had some kind of an approximation of work-life balance, what they realized were where people were evaluating their lives, they weren't evaluating it by one metric, which is what many of us do. That's called the fallacy. It's called a collapsing metric. In other words, you just look at one thing. And what is that one thing? It's usually money. Because money's easy to count. You can tell. Telling if you're a good boyfriend or husband or a good father, what's the score for that? How do I know? I can tell you one thing, though. If my bank account balance goes up, bank account balance goes down. It's like a video game. I can tell. Keep the number. Keep it going up. But you ignore your health. You ignore your relationships. You know, you ignore meaning in your life, you know, because you only look at one number. So what they found was that there were 4 metrics. And those people who thought about those 4 metrics, the first was happiness. Are you enjoying what you're doing? Second was achievement. You know, okay, those dollars, promotions, am I doing well? Third was significance. Is what I'm doing benefiting the people I love and the people who love me? And then fourth, you know, was legacy. In some small way, am I making the world a better place? And if you look at your calendar, actually looking at your time is the best way to do it in terms of a week or a month. Are you making deposits in each of those 4?
Yeah.
Am I enjoying what I'm doing? Am I getting ahead? Are the people around me benefiting from what I'm doing, the people I love? And then do I feel like I'm making a contribution to the world? And if people looked at their schedule and they saw that they were doing a little bit for each category, and again, the ratio might differ from person. Some people are much more focused on happiness, some people are much more focused on achievement, but you can't ignore any of them.
Yep.
People who found that balance that worked for them between all 4, that was really critical, because you can't go all in on anyone. If you go all in on happiness, you're going to get evicted because you need to make money and pay the rent. But if you're all focused on money and you're miserable, that sucks. And even if you're happy and you're making money, if you're not caring about the people around you and they're not caring about you, things in the long term are not going to be good. You need to think about happiness, achievement, significance, and legacy. And that's how you start to develop a well-rounded life.
Love it. You know what else I love is you break down Einstein's contract with his wife, which is fascinating, right? Because here's another thing I'll tell you. In my brain, I look at someone like Einstein and I say, he probably had it all figured out, right? Like, this guy's a genius. So obviously his relationship was great. You know what I'm saying? Clearly. You know, you don't see like sort of miserable genius, like whatever. And so you literally broke down where he had a contract that his wife had to sign about what her duties were, and because he spent no time with her, right?
Basically.
Yep. And tell me what were some of the things on the contract?
It was like you know, you will not interrupt me, you will provide my meals for me, you will never embarrass me in front of the children or in public. If I ask you to leave at any point, you will leave. He just spelled out, like, I mean, if you gave that contract to an employee, it would be disrespectful, let alone to your spouse. And there's that halo effect where we feel like, oh, this guy's a genius in physics, so he must be a genius in human relationships. Probably the opposite is true. I mean, it was just, you look at that and, you know, people go all in on one aspect of their life. You know, we all know people who focus exclusively on relationships. They don't think about their career, and things don't necessarily go well for them, especially if people don't treat them well, or people think all about their career, they don't think about their relationships, and, you know, they end up miserable and lonely. It's like, no, it's like, you know, thinking about that balance and discovering, you know, somewhat through trial and error, what level of balance works for us. How much social time do you need to be happy? How much money do you need to be happy? You know, and how much do you need to love what you're doing to keep going?
It's so cool. And I just like how, like, once again, it's so easy to look at these great people in history, and not that they're not great, and not that some of them didn't have it figured out, but it's so easy to look at them all and say, that is success. They had it all figured out. They were happy. They were great. I am not. Or me and my friends, or whatever. And I think you did a good job at picking a few people and saying, here's what they did. Here's how crazy they were. What was the baseball guy's name?
Oh, yeah, Ted Williams.
Ted Williams. So Ted Williams, like, you just talk about how he was this incredible hitter, had it down to an absolute science, but whatever. But his home life was just terrible, and he knew that, and he acknowledged that. And so I don't know. The way that you wrote it and showed it, just to me was like, okay, I got it. Like, because I'm also a big fan of, like, you can't build your life. Like, if you're, let's just say you're 16 and you're trying to plan the perfect life. You can't plan to be Michael Jackson. Like, that's not the rule. That's an anomaly. The same way you can't plan to be Einstein. You can't, like, you have to plan to be a well-rounded person. And maybe 1 in a trillion you have this weird gift. But, like, I think that also young people kind of plan this, like, well, I'm gonna be great. And so I don't need to worry about all this shit. I just need to do, you know, what this guy did. And I think you did good at showing, hey guys, here's kind of.
I mean, it's a dance, you know. The world is your dance partner. You know, it's like you can't just totally do your own thing. Your dance partner is going to move, and you need to respond to that. You know, so and these, like, really rare occurrences, if you're some prodigy, okay, that's fine. But it's like, no, we're all kind of responding in a way to what the world gives us, what we give back to the world. So, you know, it's ongoing. You might realize, hey, you know, I mean, if I don't think I'm going to be in the NBA. I'm not tall enough. It's like, okay, you know, that's fine. What are the other options? But preparing yourself so that you're ready for that exchange with the world, that you're not making demands, which, that's only going to lead to anger and frustration.
Yeah. And you also talk about, I love the breakdown between pickers and choosers.
Yeah.
That is right, that people sort of looking at all of it and choosing what you want to do.
Yeah.
Over sort of picking from what's in the moment.
I mean, if it's like the idea that if you just look at what's there, is that there are tons of options. Yeah. There would be no entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
If we just looked and we said, okay, what are the job roles available?
Yeah.
Okay,
in the 5-mile radius.
Exactly.
All right. Looks
then
like Starbucks.
You'd only be working at the local place.
Yep.
Versus saying, here's what I want. How do I go get it? Versus saying, here's what's available.
Mm-hmm.
Many restaurants you go to, yes, there's a menu. But if you ask them, hey, could you do this? They would fix it for you. They would customize it for you. They would change it for you. Can you take the onion off? They will change it. Yeah. You can do that. It's like, but if we just go by what's prescribed, we just follow, it's like, okay, a suit can look good off the rack, but it's even better if you tailor it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing.
Damn it, man. It's just a mentality shift.
Yeah.
And the last thing that you touched on that I really love, because you reference Deep Work by Cal Newport in this one.
He's awesome.
I love that book.
Cal's the greatest.
But you talk about killing your to-do list, which is something that I need to work on. I'm really good on my to-do list, but I see the value here, and I saw it in the book, and I just haven't. It's
tough.
I think that I don't have it's a commitment issue.
Yeah.
Because when you put a time, so what you say is kill the to-do list and schedule everything. Yeah. So if you need to do anything from your dry cleaning to coming up with a new business plan, don't write it down on this to-do list that could be done anytime. Schedule it. Say, well, can I do it Wednesday at 3 p.m.? Okay, Wednesday at 3 p.m. I'm coming up with my new business plan. Or at 2 p.m. I'm going to do laundry. I think it's a commitment issue on my part. I think
it's tough.
When I write it in the calendar, I'm like, fuck, I have to do that then.
Yeah.
Where if it lingers, I can kind of go around it. But that's the whole strategy.
No, but it's this was Cal's idea, and I think it's brilliant to think through, because the issue is with the to-do list, you can easily write down 27 hours worth of stuff for a 24-hour period.
Yep.
And then people go, why didn't I get it all done? Why? Because it's impossible. Because you said you want to watch 25 2-hour movies on Thursday. The math doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what he says is schedule everything, because then you can be realistic. You can say, hey, I've only got 8 hours to get stuff done. Okay, let me put 8 hours worth of stuff here.
Yep.
That's great. And then I can be very clear, and I can say, X is not going to happen.
Yep.
X might happen on Friday, but X is not going to happen today.
Yep.
And that allows you. But yeah, it's tricky, because we want that feeling that I can get it all done. And it's like, and hey, maybe if we stretch, maybe we could do more, because sometimes it's tough to estimate how long something will take.
Yeah.
But to really be able to prioritize and say, hey, here's the things I need to get done. Well, how much time do I have today? Then I can be realistic, and I can say, I'm really only going to get these 3 things done.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to tell everybody this is not going to happen until Friday. We can plan properly around that. We can get that done, versus, continually telling people, these 5 things are going to get done. Oh, I only got 3. And now people start saying, whenever he says 5, don't listen, don't.
Yeah,
and you tell yourself, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to, it's like, I'm going to get that rental car back by, no, you're not. You're going to be paying for an extra day.
Yeah.
I mean, so it allows you to plan more effectively,
Yeah.
to know what's going to happen, and then to actually get things done.
It's so true. And I think that sometimes one of the side effects is you end up, I'm real big, as I'm trying to figure it all out myself, I'm real big on making, and I think you talk about this a little bit, but making all the goals attainable.
Yeah.
And so what you don't realize is it's great to be ambitious, and everyone wakes up in the morning and is high on coffee and feels like they can conquer the world. And you're going to write down that that's what you're going to do today, or that's what you're going to do this week. But you end up, when you go home and you're tired and your willpower is depleted, and you look at your list and you didn't do it, you feel like you're a shitty person.
Yeah.
And it's like, as opposed to going home with you had realistic goals for that day, you won.
Yes.
You won that day.
Yeah.
And now you feel good. And I just think that that's such a big thing that I'm trying to find the happy medium. Where I'm at after reading Deep Work is I schedule wake up, coffee, break, eat. But the problem is then I put notes, phone, and emails. Yeah. It's in a, as opposed to saying, do this, do that, check email, I put notes, phone, email. So it's like, okay, this is my time to sit down and go through my notes, but you don't always, if you could go to expert level, I just think like I see it.
Well, I mean, the really critical thing there is having that plan. Like you said, it's like having that plan and then following the plan. Because what happens to us so often is we get reactive, where instead of saying, here's my plan, here's what I'm going to do, 1, 2, 3. No, we go 1, 2, you get a phone call. Hey, can you do this thing? Now all of a sudden you're off on another track, or email comes in. Oh, hey, here's something which is a big priority, or it's something that frankly is kind of fun and you want to do it. And now you're off the plan. And so it gets very hard, versus following that list, saying, here, I'm getting these things done at that time. And frankly, a big part of that is limiting, which is the hardest thing to do in the modern world. Notifications on the phone, texts, emails, calls. It's like to turn all that off and to be able to say, I'm not going to be reactive because I'm not going to let stuff intrude, on me, is to have, and then to take a few times a day and say, here's where I'm going to check all my emails, here's where I'm going to check all my texts, here's where I'm going to respond to all my phone calls, and have those designated as batches. Because if there's a constant influx, all these things are just grabbing your attention and pulling you away from that plan. And that's when we get to the end of the day and we're like, I was supposed to do these 5 things.
What did I do today?
I did one of them. What was it? Where did the time go?
I sent a couple memes around. That's all I did.
Exactly. It's just like, I spent how many hours on Reddit? I mean, it's just things are pulling you in another direction. And it's just like, you need to be able to, metaphorically shut that door, not have those influences. It's a lot easier to not eat donuts if you don't have donuts in the house. It's like, don't expose yourself to these things, to shut them off, and you'll be able to follow that list. It's tough, but it's like once you develop that skill, oh my God, it's like a superpower.
Yeah, so true. And the big thing for me too is that it's a skill that can be developed. Like that's just the biggest. People are so. Have you ever read Mindset by Carol Dweck?
Yes.
So just the difference of like, okay, the first day that you try to schedule everything, you're gonna be shitty at it.
Yeah.
And over time, you will get better. You will get more disciplined. You will get more whatever. Like I think that's such a huge thing.
Yeah.
In the conclusion, I will say if self-compassion was the number one thing that stuck with me, this story of Ghost Boy was definitely close number 2.
Yeah.
It was just mind-blowing. And like the relation to me, sort of like how it explained people who maybe have a lot of great ideas or a lot of great ambitions, but don't go actually do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that drives a lot of people nuts is like you have all these ideas in your head. In your head, you're great. In your head, you're better than that guy. You're better than that guy. But because you're not actually doing anything, you just sit at home and leave it on the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think it drives people miserable. And I feel bad for those people.
Yeah.
So I guess, can you quickly tell the Martin story?
Yeah. I mean, basically, when he was a kid, he got, I'm not sure if it was viral meningitis or I'm not sure if they know exactly what it was. But basically, he was what's called locked in, which is when, you can't move your body. You're in there, you're completely conscious, but you can't move, you can't speak, you can't do anything. And for years, they thought he was in a vegetative state. They thought he was gone, alive, but gone. And the truth is, he was completely conscious and aware.
Like worst nightmare.
Oh, it was horrible. And And then, after a while, and it was horrible for him. And not only was it emotionally painful to just be sitting there and not be able to do anything, but I mean, he experienced abuse. He experienced a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
But then at one point, the doctors realized he was in there. And then after a period of time, he was able to communicate with people. He was able to, to move a little bit. And dude just took off like a rocket. He just said, he had been dreaming in his head for so many years about what he would do if he could.
Yep.
And here's this guy who is still, can't speak without assistance, can't move without a wheelchair. He managed to go out there and he taught himself computer programming, started his own company, got married, found a wife. He's successful, wrote a book. He is successful. He is well-rounded. And so when we feel like, oh, you know, I can't do that, you look at where this guy came from. You look at the situation this guy was in, what he managed to achieve. He's happily married. He's successful. He wrote a book. You know, he's making money. He can even drive a car. I mean, like all these things. To think about how low he was and how high he came.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know,
incredible.
Human potential is amazing, but we you know, it's like you really need to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But you see, it's like even somebody who is, you cannot imagine a lower situation.
Oh my gosh.
He managed to overcome.
I literally, like, after I read the book, I still do it, but I'll be sitting, and you know, we all do it, right? Where you're sitting on a weekend or whatever, and you're just procrastinating, and you're just like, oh, you have all these ideas and all these things you know you should be doing, and you know that once you go do them, you feel better, whether it's working out, or right?
Yes.
But like you're sitting, you're in that moment, and it's like you're locked in, like it's like you're like Martin, and like that's how I feel. Is like, okay, just remember like the power that this guy got from breaking out of that. I don't know. It's a weird thing that really resonated with me, where I'm like, you're doing it right now.
I'm just caught in this loop.
Yeah, like you're just locked in, and then every hour you wait on the couch, the workout seems harder, and you know what I'm saying. The phone call seems.
You forget how good it feels after.
Yeah.
When you've accomplished something.
Why do our brains do that? Like, why? The moment you leave, you're like, oh, I love that. I'm gonna do that every time. You're like, what the hell?
It's funny. There was a study on that. One of the problems, especially with working out, is that we focus too much on the beginning. Is that we think, oh, I got to get up, or it hurts when I start working out. If we think more about the middle or the end, if we don't focus on the beginning, it can help us get up and get going. That great feeling after makes a big difference.
I like that. I'm gonna try to work on that, because I always have wondered, like, why do our brains fight the things that we know long term are good for us? And for instance, like, why do I'm sure there's some weird evolutionary example or explanation, but like, why can we not wait to do something that's bad for us long term? You know, how come when you're done eating a box of chocolate, you're like, oh shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can't wait to get in there. But going to the gym, you leave. You know, why it's so counterproductive?
It's just, I mean, that focus on the short term, where it's just like it's natural to, you know, that there's one book out there on psychology. It really has a great title, where it's something like what your brain wants and why you should do the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's like because we want to conserve energy. It's like humans spent so long, you know, it's like starving for, you know, trying to get food, trying to get everything. So we're always constantly. It's like, oh, okay, you want to do that thing that gets a quick payoff, you know, versus that. But you know, it can be harder. But that's where habits come in.
Yep.
That's where it's once you make something a habit, there's plenty of things we do that are challenging, that are difficult. But we've gotten to that point where it's something we do every day, and we're used to it. We don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, here's the big ender. You wrote this book. You gave all different sides of all different arguments. I mean, literally, it was one of the few that I go through. You know, I read all these books. Some of them I give up on early, and I put them in the couldn't finish pile. Some of them are like, oh, that was good. I finished it, but that was good. I won't be recommending it or sending it to anyone. But this one really fell in that last category, which is send it to people. I started an office book club. I'm gonna do it for the office book club. Read it again. Like, remember, I mean, it really got me.
Thank you.
And so my big question is, after all this research, after all these things, what makes a successful life?
What makes a successful life is, first and foremost, really getting to know yourself. Knowing your signature strengths. What are you good at? What do you uniquely bring to the table? Understanding your intensifiers. What are those things that are negative, but in the right situation, they could be a positive? Knowing yourself, and then picking the right pond. What's that environment that rewards what I do? What's that environment that respects somebody like me, my skills? And finding the alignment between knowing who I am, what I'm good at, and finding an environment that says, we need somebody like you, whether you create that environment as an entrepreneur or whether you find that environment in a company, in a city, saying, we respect what you are, what you do. To me, when you align those two, that's what produces success in many areas of life.
Huge. I love it. Your wrap up on it, and you wrapped it up by saying, tell us what you are again. You said, like, I'm a
Oh yeah, I'm an introverted what the orchid hypothesis,
Yep.
introverted orchid matcher who wants to be a giver.
Yep.
You know, and what do you call it? No, I mean there's a lot of the different elements
Yeah,
of it that
it's
I
so
could
good.
identify
Yeah.
with that, and I think that's what becomes critical is when we look there and we see, oh, I'm like this, I'm like this, I'm
Yeah.
like that. Then once you know what to work on,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being unsure and then we just vacillate. It's like, no, it's like we need to say, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses,
Yeah.
and then you can start to say, here's where I am and here's where I need to go.
Yep. Huge. Man, I can't thank you enough for doing this. That was great. I think I feel pumped up.
Oh, dude,
I hope
so do
the
I.
listeners get the same out of it that we just did. Tell everyone where to find you. Yeah.
The book's Barking Up the Wrong Tree. Find it on Amazon or wherever else. My blog is also called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. It's got a weird URL, so if people just Google like Barking Up the Wrong Tree blog, or if they Google my name, Eric Barker, it'll come up. And the best way to keep up with the research and the experts I'm talking to is to sign up for my weekly email. It's one email a week, and it just gives the latest on basically any of the stuff I'm looking at in terms of how to be happier, more productive, improve your relationships, grit, resilience, negotiation, etc.
So good. I got to sign up for that. And also, you'll see the book. I mean, I feel like I see it in like the airport all the time. I just see that bright orange cover. Man, it's a good choice. Thank you. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, dude, this was great.
We
Thanks
did
so
it.
much, buddy.
Thank you.